Question one is a preposition question. These types of questions don't depend on rules. Rather, they depend on conventions, that is, usage. When it comes to this expression, a way of doing something, and as we see here more specifically, we're talking about ways of imitating sounds. This tells us that the preposition that we need here is of, and this is why C is our correct answer. The other prepositions here, by, with, at, they suggest a different relationship. That's what prepositions do. They show relationships among different elements or ideas in a sentence, but they also just don't fit the convention. The ways by imitating the sounds, again, we're talking about a way of doing something. With here, we might talk about talking with someone. Again, the relationship there is a little bit different. And at, we typically use at when we are talking about a destination or some kind of movement or location at a site. Right, so these prepositions, again, they depend on convention, that is usage, and not so much on rules. Question two is a verb question. But with this question, we also have to think about sentence structure as well as punctuation. So if we look at the sentence structure here, forms of mouth music are performed around the world. Then we have a comma and a conjunction, and this suggests that what follows is also going to be an independent clause, right? So our first clause is independent. Now, what follows should also be independent, as we see here, the comma conjunction. This is one method of joining two independent clauses. Okay, so then we have the subject of that second clause. And what we're going to need is a verb, because again, the two things that every clause must have, subject and verb. Well, typically the verb would come after the subject, and we see that that's the case here as well. The problem with F no change being is that this is a participle or perhaps a gerund, but what we need here is a conjugated verb, so we can eliminate F. We can also eliminate J because we need a verb. We don't want to delete the underlined portion. So we're between G and H. Our correct answer here is H. The genre is popular in England. That makes perfect sense. And we also want to use the simple present because that's what we see in the first clause. And we want to maintain that same verb tense. Was being, this is the past progressive. And it's also, it doesn't really make sense in context of this sentence, of this clause. So that's why we would eliminate G. Question three, we might think of as a word choice question. Here we have to think about tone, since each of these answer choices provides a different tone as well as a different level of formality. So let's take a look at the context. We'll look at the sentence here and then go through the different answer choices. So Celtic mouth music exists to accompany dancing, so the rhythms and sounds are blank. So looking at A no change, first class, and the words take a back seat. One issue that I just noticed with this answer choice is the fact that we have another independent clause, the words take a back seat, and we have our conjunction but no comma. Okay, so we actually have a punctuation issue. The other issue with A is this expression, to take a back seat. It's a little bit informal, and we generally want to stay away from figurative language. it's very unlikely that we would see an answer that is correct in figurative language. All right, so we can eliminate A, no change. We know that the correct answer here is B, more important than the lyrics. Now this fits the context and the tone of the passage. C, a bigger deal than the words. This is pretty informal, a bigger deal. Doesn't really convey the same idea as more important. A bigger deal can be a couple of different things in terms of meaning. And D, way more vital than verse. It's the word choice for this answer choice, vital and verse, that don't really fit the tone. This is also a bit of an awkward expression, so we would eliminate D. And again, B is our correct answer. Question 4 is a punctuation question involving non-essential elements. Let's take a look at the clause to identify those non-essential elements. So the clause begins here. Singers often produce nonsense syllables called vocables to represent specific instrumental sounds. The non-essential elements here are these two, called vocables. And we know this because we can go straight from these elements to the infinitive phrase. So we can simply say singers often produce nonsense syllables to represent specific instrumental sounds. Now, what are these elements doing? They're providing more information about nonsense syllables. Typically, that is one of the functions of non-essential elements. And we know that when we have non-essential elements, we have to frame them with 2 commas or 2 dashes. And here we have commas. That's the only option. We see that with F, no change. We're missing a comma after vocables. We can eliminate F. We see that with G, we're missing the comma before called. H gives us the 2 commas that we need to frame those non-essential elements. This is why H is our correct answer. And we see that J also gives us 2 commas, but they are not fully around the non-essential elements. And that's why we would eliminate J. We might think of question 5 as a modifier question. We also have to think about sentence structure. Let's start at the beginning here of this sentence. So the results are songs that rarely make literal sense, but nevertheless flow in a way blink to dance to. So typically when we have this expression, it is followed by a relative dependent clause in a way that is blink. That's a pretty common expression here. That is why C is our correct answer, right? In a way that is easy to dance to. What C gives us here is a relative dependent clause. We have our relative pronoun and we have a verb, right? The 2 things that we need for a clause, subject, as we have here with our pronoun, and verb. Let's go through the other answer choices. We can eliminate A, easier, because we don't have a comparison that uses than. To use the comparative form of an adjective, we also have to use than. This is easier than this other thing, right? So that's not going to work. Easily, this is an adverb, and we would need a verb here that this modifier could modify. We don't have that. This also just doesn't make sense in this context. So we can eliminate B. And we certainly don't want to delete the underlined portion because then we lose the modifier altogether. And again, this is why C is our correct answer. Question 6 is a purpose question. And this is the type of purpose question where we have to think about what the essay would lose if we were to delete a set of underlined elements. Let's take a look at the sentence. So we have the often tongue-twisting lyrics require much practice to perfect. I think it's always a good idea to try to identify the function of the underlying elements before looking at the answer choices. And if we examine what these elements are doing, we see that they are modifying lyrics. So they are telling us something about these lyrics. And to describe the lyrics as often tongue twisting suggests that they are difficult. Because a tongue twister is something that is very difficult. It is challenging. And so to describe the lyrics as often tongue twisting suggests that this is pretty hard. So this is why F is our correct answer. It tells us that we would lose a description that emphasizes, that's what a modifier might do, emphasize the difficulty of this type of mouth music. We see that G suggests that we would lose information about writing lyrics, and there's nothing here to suggest that this is about writing. We can eliminate G. H, an indication of how often this is performed in the Celtic culture. It does have this term here, the often tongue twisting, but that's used to suggest that this is typically very difficult, right? So that is unrelated. We can eliminate H. And J tells us that we would lose an example. That's not really an example. We've already identified it as a modifier of a training exercise. And again, we don't see this as an exercise. Perhaps tongue twisters can be used as a type of exercise, but that's not something that is suggested here. So we can also eliminate J. Question 7 is a transition question. Here we have to think about the relationship between this sentence and the one that comes before it. So we'll start here. The often tongue-twisting lyrics require much practice to perfect. The greater challenge for many pure-to-buell singers is learning when to breathe. So what's important to know about the second sentence is that we have a comparison. So the first sentence suggests or tells us that the lyrics are difficult, but the greater challenge is learning when to breathe. So that's the relationship that we have between these two sentences, is a contrast. And it's a contrast to emphasize the difficulty of this second thing that's mentioned, learning when to breathe. So what we need here is a transition that gives us a contrast. As we see here with A no change, though, is used for contrast. This is why A is our correct answer. B, at the same time, this might be used for additional information. Again, and that's not the relationship that we have here. We can get rid of B. This time, this suggests events in time, but there's no indication that that is the case here. We can eliminate C. And D, still, this is used for concessions. And we're not making a concession here. Again, we have a contrast. And that's why we would eliminate D. Question 8 is a pronoun question. More specifically, it's a pronoun ambiguity question. We know it's a pronoun ambiguity question because as we see some of the answer choices like F, no change, we get it. With H, we get they. With J, we don't really get a pronoun. And we have one answer choice that gives us something much more specific. Okay, so this, when you have these kinds of answer choices, they suggest that this is a pronoun ambiguity question. So let's take a look at the sentence. Starting here, a poorly timed breath might break a song's flow, interrupting the steady beat. With F no change here, we have it relies on to help time their steps. So this pronoun it, this seems to work up until we get to about here. Because we see that the sentence introduces a new pronoun, and this is a plural possessive pronoun. But so far, we've only talked about things that are singular. So a song's flow, a beat. So there's so far nothing in this sentence that this pronoun could be referring back to. So we can eliminate F, no change. H, this would correspond with the pronoun that we have here, there. But if we went with H, it would be unclear who they are. Again, that's the ambiguity aspect of the question. So we can eliminate H. J, relied. We don't have a pronoun for this one, or a noun. We can eliminate J for that reason. And as we see here, G is our correct answer. We have a very specific answer that corresponds as well with the possessive pronoun that we see toward the end of the sentence. Question 9 is a topic sentence question. Essentially, we have to select the answer choice that frames the paragraph the best. So I think it's a good idea to read the paragraph first and try to identify the topic and a claim that one might make about that topic. So we'll start here. Instruments were prohibitively expensive and thus scarce in isolated Scottish villages. In order to fill the void, mouth music emerged and provided residents with the music they wanted for dancing. Additionally, Pierre de Buell gave anyone who didn't read music a way to learn and pass on traditional songs. So we know that this paragraph is about the emergence of this type of mouth music. And it explains why, and that's because instruments were very expensive. Okay, so we've identified the main idea in this paragraph, that mouth music emerged almost out of necessity because instruments were too expensive. So this was a solution to that problem. So if we look at our answer choices, we see that A tells us that Pierre de Buell was most likely invented out of necessity, and this is indeed our correct answer. B, mouth music singers must have a good sense of rhythm. This might be true, but we don't see anything in this paragraph about rhythm. If this were the topic sentence, we would expect this paragraph to specifically talk about rhythm. And we see that it does not. We can eliminate B. C, Celtic mouth music, including Pierre de Buell, has influenced jazz, scat singing. There's no mention of this in the paragraph. Again, if this were the topic sentence, we would expect this paragraph to be about this influence. And D tells us that this is another form of mouth music that originated in Scotland, is the walking song. Again, this is very specific, and we would expect this paragraph to discuss this topic introduced. So we can also eliminate D. Question 10 is a punctuation question. We have two independent clauses, and in between those clauses, we have a descriptive phrase or an introductory phrase. So we'll take a look at the first clause here, starting with instruments. Instruments were prohibitively expensive and thus scarce in isolated Scottish villages. So that's the end of our first clause. And this is the introductory phrase for the second clause. In order to fill the void, mouth music emerged and provided residents with the music they wanted for dancing. As we see here, there's a period to mark the end of that second independent clause. So if we wanted to join these two clauses, we would need a comma, conjunction, or semicolon. We could also just place a period at the end of this first clause and make these into two separate sentences. Well, we see here with F that there is no punctuation, and this would be a run-on sentence. So we're going to eliminate F. G gives us a conjunction, but what we're missing here is the comma. So we can't go with G. We can eliminate G. H gives us a period after that first clause. That works, and this is why H is our correct answer. And we see that with J, we have a comma, but we don't have a conjunction. So that's what's missing there. And that's why we would eliminate J. Question 11 is a pronoun question. More specifically, we're looking at relative pronouns. Let's take a look at the sentence here for context. Additionally, Pure Buell gave anyone Blink didn't read music a way to learn and pass on traditional songs. So our relative pronoun here is going to refer back to anyone. It's going to refer back to and replace anyone. And what we should also see is that the pronoun is going to be followed by a verb. This is going to be very useful for thinking about the pronoun case. That is, are we replacing the subject or are we replacing the object? That is the difference between who and whom. Okay, so the other thing that is important here is that we are talking about people. That means that we can eliminate which, because which and that are not used for people. They are not personal pronouns. So here, because we are talking about people, we are limited to whomever, whom, and who. So let's think about the case. How do we know what the case is here, or what it should be? Well, we have to think about the pronoun's relationship to the verb. Is it acting on the verb? Is it performing the action? And in this case, it is. And we can confirm that we are dealing with the subjective case, because if we were to use a different pronoun, for instance, they, we would say they didn't read music. They didn't read music, right? We wouldn't say them didn't read music, and them corresponds with the objective case. If we would say them, the answer would be whom, because this is also an objective pronoun. And we know that that's not the case. So it can't be whom, it can't be whomever. Our answer here is going to be who, a subjective relative pronoun. Question 12 is a pronoun ambiguity question. We know that this is a pronoun ambiguity question because 3 of the answer choices, F, H, and J, give us fairly vague pronouns. Now, if we look at the sentence for this question, we see that it is the topic sentence. This is important to note because in a topic sentence, we want to be very specific. We probably don't want to use pronouns because it might be unclear what those pronouns are referring to. So looking at the sentence for context, the continuing popularity of Celtic mouth music is testament to the vitality of them. So here, them doesn't make sense. There's nothing plural in the sentence to which this pronoun could be referring to. So we can eliminate F, no change. H itself, that this doesn't really make sense. This isn't something that it would do to itself, this reflexive pronoun. We can eliminate H. J, one, to the vitality of one. This doesn't really make sense as well in this context. One is typically used to refer to a person, and so that doesn't really fit. G, this is the only answer choice that is specific. And again, that is typically the case with these pronoun ambiguity questions. You'll have 3 answer choices that are pretty vague and 1 that is very specific. This is why G is our correct answer. Question 13 is a modifier question. As we'll see here, there are misplaced modifiers in 3 of these answer choices. Um, I'm going to start at the beginning of the sentence here for some context, and then we'll go through the different answer choices. So in the 1990s, groups like Mouth Music from Scotland and the Cranberries from Ireland rose to fame. And as we see here with A No Change, exposing with audiences. So here this preposition is misplaced. Exposing audiences should be together. Mouth Music worldwide, this modifier is also misplaced, right? That's something that we need to keep in mind with these types of questions, is that modifiers always modify the thing that is right next to them. Okay, so we can eliminate A. B, exposing audiences, that makes sense. And then it's audiences worldwide. Our modifiers are correctly placed there to Celtic Mouth Music. This all makes sense, and this is why B is our correct answer. C, for audiences. This preposition there is misplaced, is unnecessary, does not make this clear. Audiences worldwide exposing. So this modifier, this participle here, is misplaced. So we can eliminate C. And D, worldwide exposing. Well, we can already see that worldwide is misplaced. Mouth Music to audiences. Yeah, so it's the worldwide here that is really the main issue. All right, so we can eliminate D, and that leaves B as our correct answer. Question 14 is a redundancy and concision question. If we look at our different answer choices here, we'll see that 3 of them are fairly redundant, and 1 is very concise. So the band's celebrity continually survives. This here is redundant because to say that it survives suggests that this is continually. So this modifier here is unnecessary. Still remains, that works, although perhaps still here might be redundant, and carries on. So the second bit here certainly makes G redundant. Stays, sticking around. This is here a redundancy, but this is also pretty informal. So we would eliminate H as well. J is our correct answer, endures. This means to survive, to keep existing, and it's the most concise answer. Question 15 is a purpose question. Let's take a look at the question stem and identify the key elements of this question. So given that all the choices are accurate, which one most effectively expresses the idea that bands incorporate both classic Celtic music and current influences into their music? And so we're looking for an answer choice that suggests a blend, a combination of these 2 types of music. If we look at A No Change, we see this pretty important term here, combine, as they combine traditional mouth music, and we know that this is referring to Celtic music, with modern rhythms. And that corresponds with the second element here, current influences. We know that that is our correct answer. Let's take a look at the other ones. B, continue to produce new music and release new albums. The focus here is on the production of new music, but not on the blend of these 2 types of music. So we can eliminate B. C tells us that they put on concerts around the world, but it doesn't tell us anything about a blend of music or what this music looks like. The influences, we can eliminate C. And D tells us that they sing and dance on stage. That's really more about the performative aspect, not so much about the production of the music. And this is why we can eliminate D. Question 16 is a punctuation question. Now, it might seem like we have non-essential elements here, but all of the elements that are underlined are necessary, they are essential. So we're not going to use any punctuation. As we know, our correct answer here is going to be J. But let's take a look at the sentence. More than 2,000 years ago, a people the Romans called the Garamantes created a complex civilization in one of the world's driest places. So as we see here, these are the elements that are underlined. And these are essential because these are part of what we might say is a relative dependent clause. Here we're missing a pronoun, which is okay. But the pronoun that we would use here is whom, a people whom the Romans called the Garamantes. So we need all of these elements here because they are necessary for the meaning of this sentence. And we might say that everything here becomes the subject, even though we have a relative dependent clause. So we see that this is then followed by the verb, and we wouldn't place any punctuation in between the subject and the verb unless we had non-essential elements. So we know we can eliminate F. With G, we have a comma here after Garamantes, but that would place a comma before the verb. And again, the only time we would do that is if we have non-essential elements, in which case we would need 2 commas. So we can eliminate G. And H, we wouldn't use a colon here. Not only are we missing the context for the colon, but the placement of this would also be incorrect. We have to think of a colon as a period. And we wouldn't be able to place a period here. So for this reason, we can eliminate H. Question 17 is a parallel structure question. When it comes to writing, when we present information, we want to use the same kinds of structures, particularly if we have a list. And that's what we have here. So we have a verb followed by an object. So they built towns. If we look at our other example here, traded throughout North Africa. So we want the item in the middle to follow this same structure. So we're going to need a verb followed by an object. If we look at A, no change, cloth was manufactured there. This breaks the structure. This is a noun. And this is also passive voice, which we don't see the other items here, the other elements use passive voice. So we can eliminate A, no change. The manufacture of cloth took place. Again, we are starting with a noun. What we need is a verb, as we see here with C, manufactured verb, and cloth, there is our object. That's why C is our correct answer. Looking at D here, we just have the noun. We are missing the verb that we need to follow this structure. Question 18 is a purpose question. Here we have to think about what the essay would lose if we were to delete certain elements. So looking at the question stem here, if the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, the paragraph would primarily lose a concluding statement that does which of the following. So we're talking about this sentence here. They, here referring to the Garamantes, they also grew a variety of crops, including wheat, dates, palms, grapes, figs, and melons. So if we think about what this sentence is doing, it's adding information. It's giving us information about the kinds of crops that the Garamantes grew. Let's take a look at the answer choices, and we'll think about what the essay would lose if we deleted this sentence. So F tells us that we would lose, or that this statement suggests that the Garamantes were successful farmers and that they grew a variety of crops. Well, this is true, and we're able to link some of the terms in the answer choice to terms that we see in the sentence itself. And this is always a good indication of the correct answer. You want to be able to connect ideas very clearly. This is, in fact, our correct answer for number 18. G says that this is a summary, that it summarizes the information presented about the Garamantes, but it's not a summary as we see here. This is additional information. So we can eliminate G. H says that this indicates the products that the Garamantes exported to Rome. This might be true, but it doesn't say so explicitly. And that would be a pretty big inference to make. So we can eliminate H as well. And J tells us that this sentence takes the focus off the Garamantes and places it on the products they imported. Well, this here is incorrect, since we're told that they grew these different crops. They did not import them. And the focus is still on the Garamantes, as we see here, the Garamantes, this is the subject of this sentence. So we can also eliminate J. Question 19 is a redundancy question. As we see here in the question stem, which choice provides new information to the essay? In other words, which answer choice provides information that is not redundant? So we're looking for new information. Let's take a look at the paragraph as a whole. So we'll take a look at the previous sentence, so we can look back and identify elements that are redundant. Okay, so the survival of their civilization, that's pretty important, depended on hundreds of miles of underground tunnels. These tunnels carried water to desert settlements from an aquifer, an underground water source, and then we get to our question. So which choice provides new information? Well, if you look at A, no change, this tells us that the water source was in the distant mountains. And we don't see that information in this paragraph yet. So this is new information, and this is also our correct answer. Let's look at the other answer choices to identify the elements that are redundant. So B, upon which they depended. We see that here. We're told this in the topic sentence for this paragraph. So that would not be new information. We can eliminate B. C, used by the Garamantes. Well, the fact that they depended on these hundreds of miles of underground tunnels already suggests that these were used, this water source was used by the Garamantes. So we can eliminate C. And D tells us that this water source was a key to their survival. Again, we already see that information in the previous sentence. So we can also eliminate D. We might think of question 20 as a purpose question. We might also think of this as a word choice question. Let's take a look at the question stem. Which choice best indicates the method used to build the tunnels? So the key term here is method. So we're looking for something that tells us how these tunnels were created, how they were built. So let's take a look at our answer choices. F, no change, tells us that these were hand-dug tunnels. This gives us a method. It tells us how they were created. They were created by hand. This also turns out to be our correct answer. G, underground tunnels. This doesn't tell us anything about how they were created. All it tells us is their location, where they are. So we can eliminate G. H, dimly lit tunnels. This tells us about how much light might enter the tunnel, but not about how these tunnels were created. So we can eliminate H. And desert tunnels, again, this is more about their geographic location and doesn't tell us anything about the method. So we can also eliminate J. Question 21 is a modifier question. Let's take a look at the sentence for some context. When the tunnels reached a town or field, the water flowed into blank accessible surface canals or reservoirs. So the elements that are part of this question, the most important one is probably accessible. This is an adjective. And then we might also consider surface canals. This is a compound noun. So we have this adjective that is modifying this noun. And then we have the question here. And we're going to be modifying this adjective. So we need a modifier that can modify an adjective. That's going to be an adverb. So that's what we're going to be looking for here. So more easy, here we have the comparative form. This is actually a couple of issues with this answer choice. This is grammatically incorrect because the adjective easy has a comparative form, easier. But also, as I mentioned, we need an adverb that can modify accessible, and easy is an adjective. So we can eliminate A. B, we have the comparative form here and the adverb that we need, more easily accessible. More easily accessible. This is why B is our correct answer. C, here we use the comparative form of the adjective, and we have a conjunction, but again, what we need here is an adverb that can modify accessible. So we can eliminate C, and D here into easy and accessible surface canals. There's an issue with this modifier. It would actually be modifying surface canals and not the fact that they are more easily accessible. So we can also eliminate D. Question 22 might seem like a concision question, but we can also think of this in terms of modifiers. And that is because we have several dangling modifiers. Let's take a look at F, no change. So having left no clues, archaeologists don't know how the Garmontes learned to build fagaras. This is a participle phrase, having left no clues. And the rule is that these participle phrases always modify the subject. So with F, no change, this is literally telling us that archaeologists have left no clues. So that's the dangling modifier, which is a grammatical issue. G, same idea, similar issue here, a genuine puzzle to scientists. This is suggesting that archaeologists are a genuine puzzle to scientists. That is, again, a dangling modifier, so we can get rid of G. And H, giving no indication. This functions in the same way. This is suggesting that archaeologists are giving no indication. That is a dangling modifier. And this is why J is our correct answer. Question 23 is a preposition question, but we might also think of this as a parallel structure question. Let's take a look at the sentence here for some context. So, and because the water came from an aquifer rather than from rainfall, the supply was unaffected by drought. So what we have here is a comparison. And we know that when we have comparisons, we need this word, than. Then, this is an easily confused word. This is, we use to indicate time, a transition of time. So this is not the correct word that we need. Then from its rainfall. Also, the use of this pronoun here is unnecessary and actually makes the meaning not very clear. So we can eliminate a no change. B, we see than. This is the word that we need, the term that we need for this comparison. And it also gives us the correct preposition. So to come from something. That's the preposition that we need here, and also it follows the structure that we see with this first element. And this is why B is our correct answer. With C, we see that we only have then, the easily confused word. That's not going to work. And D, we have by as a preposition, but to come by means something different from to come from. So that's not going to work with the context that we have. So we can also eliminate D. Question 24 is a verb question. Here we're looking at this subject, the Garamantes, and we have to select an answer choice that gives us a verb conjugation that works with this subject. Okay, so just for some context, let's take a look at the sentence. So the Garamantes blank on a constant supply of water for drinking, washing, and irrigation. And we know that this is about this civilization. And this paragraph in particular is telling us about how the Garamantes created canals and the function of these canals. All right, so let's take a look at F, no change. The Garamantes could have relied. With F, we have a grammatical issue, and it's a fairly common grammatical issue. What we might say here is could have relied. And when we form the contraction for could have, we get could have. And this is why sometimes we might see this, which is incorrect. Could have sounds like could have, the contraction for these two words. Now, the other reason why this wouldn't work, even if we had this, if we didn't have this issue, this would suggest that this was not the case, that they did not rely on a constant supply of water. But based on the context, we know that that's not true, that they actually did create canals and an elaborate system to supply water for drinking, washing, and irrigation. So we can eliminate F, no change. G, had to of. Same issue here. That's a grammatical mistake. We can eliminate G. H, could rely. This is our correct answer. There are no grammatical issues. And it works with the context. So the Garamantes could rely on a constant supply of water. This is something that they could do based on the things that they accomplished in creating this system. That's why H is our correct answer. And J, relies. This gives us an issue in terms of subject-verb agreement. This is plural. This would be they. So we couldn't say they relies. And the other issue with J is that this is simple present, but we're talking about a civilization from the past. So there's also an issue with the verb tense. Question 25 is a transition question. That means that we have to think about what this sentence is doing in this paragraph, about the relationship between this sentence and the sentence that comes before it. So it might not be very easy to tell because we don't really have a topic sentence. But this paragraph is about the benefits, the good things that came out of these canals. So as we see here with this first sentence, because the canals were underground, the water they carried stayed clean and didn't evaporate. Because the water came from an aquifer rather than from rainfall, the supply was unaffected by drought. So then we're told that the Garamantes could rely on a constant supply of water. And as we get to the sentence here, for this question, we see that we're told that the cold, damp air of the Fagaras lowered the temperature inside the homes that were built over them, resulting in an ancient form of air conditioning. So these are all good things that came out of these canals, out of this underground system. And these are all different points related to that idea, right? That there were benefits to these canals. So we can think of this sentence as additional information, because that's what this sentence is doing. It's telling us one more good thing about these canals. And for additional information, we're going to go with a no change, moreover. Moreover is used to provide additional information. This is why A is our correct answer. B, nevertheless, this is used for concessions, but as we see here, we can almost think of this as a bullet point list of the benefits of these canals. So we can eliminate B. C, in contrast, this is used for contrast. We don't have contrasting information here. We can also eliminate C. And D, even so, we might use this for a concession as well, right? And as we mentioned, we don't have a concession here. This is additional information. Question 26 is a pronoun question, but here we have to think very carefully about sentence structure. I'm going to read the sentence here for this question, and then we'll talk about some important elements of the sentence. So the Garamantes blink thrived until about 500 CE, when some archaeologists believe they began to deplete the aquifer. So looking at this sentence here, now I didn't read the pronoun here that's underlined, and that's because we don't need to. This here is our subject, and this is our verb. So we have an independent clause. This first part of the sentence is an independent clause. And that means that if we add a pronoun here, that's going to be redundant. It's going to be unnecessary. So we can just simply say the Garamantes thrived until about 500 CE. Who is a relative pronoun? And this would give us a relative dependent clause, but we already have a subject and a verb here. So we can eliminate F. G, many of whom. Again, this relative pronoun, this is going to give us or set up another clause, a dependent clause. But as we already mentioned, what we have here is an independent clause, subject and verb. So a relative pronoun is not needed. And H, having. This is not a pronoun. This also does not give us a verb. The Garamantes having thrived until about 500 CE. With H, we would be setting up a participle phrase. So we would be turning this whole thing into a participle phrase. And that would have to be followed by an independent clause, because these participle phrases always modify a subject. But we see here that this is followed by a dependent clause. So that's not going to work. That's going to mess with the sentence structure. Again, what we need is independent, and then what follows is a dependent clause. So we're going to delete the underlined portion here, since we already have our subject and verb. Question 27 is a transition question. And let's take a look at the sentence here for some context. So the Fagaras supplied less and less water. The Garamantes' population declined. We know that looking at the sentence structure that we're going to need a subordinator. We have a clause, and then we have a comma followed by another clause, and this happens to be independent. So we know that for the first clause, we're going to need a subordinating conjunction or a subordinator. Let's take a look at a no change. As the Fagara supplied less and less water. As means during the time of. It might also imply a cause and effect relationship. So the Fagara supplied less and less water, and this led to a population decline. And A is actually our correct answer. This fits the context as well as the sentence structure. We can eliminate B, as to when. That doesn't really make sense in context of this sentence. We simply just need as, so we can get rid of B. Whereas this is used for contrast, same as though. So we can see C and D as essentially the same answer. These are both used for contrast, and we don't have contrasting information here. So we can also eliminate C and D. Question 28 is a punctuation question. Now I'm going to read the whole sentence here so that we can talk about the sentence structure, because this is going to be important for understanding the correct answer or making sense of the correct answer. So as the Fagara supplied less and less water, this is a dependent clause. We have a comma. The Garamantes population declined. This is an independent clause. All right, so now we get to the part that's relevant or most relevant for this question or to this question. Their civilization eventually collapsed. So we've already established that this previous clause is an independent clause, and this is also an independent clause. We have our subject, civilization, and the verb collapse, the two elements that we need for a clause. And we don't have a subordinator, which tells us that this is an independent clause. Well, that comma here would be incorrect. This is a punctuation mistake, what we call a comma splice. That's when we try to use a comma as a semicolon or as a period in between two independent clauses. So we can eliminate F. G, this gives us a proper noun. So we swap out the possessive pronoun, but we still have a punctuation issue because this is still the beginning of a new clause. And so with G, we get a run-on sentence. H is our correct answer because we have two independent clauses, which means that they could be separate sentences. So we can use a period at the end of the previous independent clause. And J, we're missing punctuation here, which again would give us a grammatical issue, run-on sentence as well. So we can eliminate J. Question 29 is a redundancy question. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to read the entire sentence so we can identify the elements that are redundant. So the stone mounds that mark their ventilation shafts are still visible in what is now southwestern Libya. And with a no change, we're told where they can be seen even now. So what is redundant about a no change? Well, we're told that these ventilation shafts are still visible. That means that we can see them. That implies that people are allowed to view them. So this bit here, the underlying elements where they can be seen even now, this idea is already expressed in this sentence. So we can eliminate a no change. B, this might seem like it's more specific, a place where visitors can see these amazing signs of an ancient civilization. This information might be new, but again, this is something that we can infer based on what's already been presented here, that these ventilation shafts are still visible. Not only that, but this introduces new ideas that the essay does not explore. That's not really the focus of the essay. So we can also eliminate B. C, the location that continues to present visitors with a view of these remnants of a time gone by. We should see that C is very close to B. The wording is very different. but they are about the same in terms of tone and redundancy. So we can also eliminate C. Here we want to delete the underlined portion. This information is already in the sentence itself. So as we see, these three other answer choices would make the paragraph more redundant. Question 30 is a purpose question. And this is a question that requires us to think about test mode. Test mode refers to what a passage is doing. And there are three test modes. So a passage can be a narrative. That is, it's going to tell a story. And this is typically written in first person. A passage can also be argumentative. That is, it would advance some kind of claim. And a passage can also be informative. That is, it's simply going to tell you about something, about a topic, provide information rather objectively. So these types of questions are typically about test mode. And we can identify key terms here that are essentially asking us about the test mode. So suppose the writer's primary purpose had been to present information. In other words, was this an informative passage? To present information about a civilization's efforts to overcome a natural obstacle in order to survive. Would this essay accomplish that purpose? Well, thinking about the essay, thinking about the passage, we can say that this is the case. This is about a civilization that created a system of tunnels in order to survive in the desert. And so that is the natural obstacle that is mentioned here, that is discussed in this essay. And this passage is also informative. It wasn't a narrative, it wasn't argumentative. So we know just by thinking about this passage that the answer here is going to be yes. Let's take a look at the answer choices. So F says yes, because it explains that the Garamantes traded throughout North Africa and the Mediterranean. That's not the focus of the essay here. Again, it's about the tunnels, the system of tunnels that they built. So we can eliminate F. G, yes, because it describes the Garamantes' method of bringing water to an otherwise dry area. That would be the desert. G is our correct answer. H says no, because the Fagars were not naturally occurring tunnels, but that's exactly the point of this question is about something about efforts that led them to overcome a natural obstacle. We can eliminate H. And J, no, because the Fagars ultimately led to the downfall of the Garamantes civilization. That's not really relevant to this question. The question is about doing something to overcome an obstacle, a natural obstacle, and that is living in the desert. So we can also eliminate J. Question 31 is a redundancy question. Whenever we see delete the underlined portion as an answer choice, chances are that we are dealing with redundant elements in the sentence. So let's take a look at the sentence so we can identify those redundant elements. At the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory in Antarctica, 86 cables descend 2,500 meters down into the glacial terrain. So we have this very important verb here, to descend, that already means to go down, to go somewhere lower. So we are descending, that already implies that we are moving downward. So we don't need to repeat down here. We don't need this preposition. So we can eliminate A. We can also eliminate B. This is the same idea. This is warrior down below. B. C, downwards. This gives us a sense of direction, but we already know in which direction we are moving. So we want to delete the underline portion because all of these other answer choices would make the sentence redundant. Question 32 is a punctuation question. And I'm going to read the sentence and we can identify the different elements of the sentence structure. So we can identify the punctuation rule that applies here. So each cable is equipped with 60 digital optical modules. This here is an independent clause. So we have one clause here, independent, which are programmed to detect a faint blue flash known as a Cherenkov radiation, or as Cherenkov radiation. So we have this pronoun here, which is going to give us a relative dependent clause. This is the second part here is a relative dependent clause. Okay, so the structure here is independent clause followed by a relative dependent clause. And it's one created by this pronoun which is specifically used to introduce non-essential elements. That means that we're going to need a comma before which, but we don't need a comma afterwards. Otherwise, we would be treating which itself as non-essential. Our correct answer here is G, because as we see, we have the comma before the pronoun, and we don't have any other commas in between these elements. So this is our correct answer. Now, why not H? We could place a colon here if we think of a colon as end punctuation, as a period. We could end the sentence there. So the placement would be correct, but not the context, because what follows is additional information. There's no list, there's no revelation, there's no equivalence on the other side of the colon. So we can eliminate H. And we can't go with J, the semicolon, because the second component of the sentence would also have to be an independent clause. Again, we can only use a semicolon to join two independent clauses. Question 33 is a punctuation question. What we have here are non-essential elements. So let's take a look at the sentence. This radiation, a veritable shockwave of photonic energy, is emitted when subatomic particles called neutrinos collide with electrons in the molecules of ice. So to identify the components of this sentence, the components that we need for a clause, we need a subject and we need a verb. So everything else in between here is non-essential, and we can test that by reading the sentence without those non-essential elements. So we can easily say, this radiation is emitted when subatomic particles called neutrinos collide with electrons. Right, we can go from the subject to the verb. The only time that we place things in between the subject and the verb is typically when we have non-essential elements. And we see that we have a dash as part of the text here already. So what we need is a second dash to frame those non-essential elements. We know that we can't use a colon. B gives us that dash. This is our correct answer. We can't use a semicolon because we can only use a semicolon to join two independent clauses. And D is missing punctuation. We need another dash here to frame those non-essential elements. And that's why B is our correct answer. Question 34 is a purpose question, and it's the type of question where we have to think about what the essay would lose if the author were to delete a set of underlined elements. So what I recommend for this type of question is to try to identify the function of the underlined elements before you look at the answer choices. So if we were to do that here, we would read this sentence. I'm going to start at the very beginning here of this paragraph. Although there are countless neutrinos in the universe, 50 trillion neutrinos pass through your body every second. Actually detecting them is a formidable task. So what is this parenthetical statement doing? What does it add to the sentence? Well, the sentence, the main idea is that there are many, many neutrinos, countless neutrinos in the universe. What is the relationship between that idea and what we find in the parenthetical statement? This is a more specific number, 50 trillion, which is almost impossible to imagine. 50 trillion pass through your body every second. Okay, so this is the parenthetical statement is very much related to the main idea in the sentence, and that is that there are countless neutrinos in the universe. So it emphasizes this idea. It emphasizes this idea by giving us a more specific value. Okay, so looking at our answer choices, F says that this statement specifies why neutrinos are practically weightless. There's no mention here about their mass, so we can eliminate F. G tells us that this explains how neutrinos pass through matter. It tells us that neutrinos pass through matter, but what's missing here is the how. That would involve some kind of method, some kind of explanation. H indicates why there are so many neutrinos. It tells us that there are many neutrinos, countless neutrinos, but we don't really have a why. That's not what we find in the parenthetical statement. J emphasizes, and we identified this as an emphasis, how numerous neutrinos are. So if we ask how numerous are they, we might say, well, 50 trillion pass through your body every second. Right, so that is the function of that parenthetical statement. This is why J is our correct answer. Question 35 is a transition question. Here we have to think about the relationship between two sentences. The first sentence is this one here that tells us that neutrinos are rarely affected by matter or electromagnetic fields. The next sentence tells us that many neutrinos have been traveling through space unimpeded, we might say unaffected, they haven't run into anything, for billions of years. So what is the relationship between these two sentences? They are basically telling us the same thing, right? The second sentence is emphasizing the claim made by the first, that neutrinos are rarely affected by matter. In fact, many neutrinos have been traveling through space unimpeded for billions of years, right? The second sentence is emphasizing the claim made by the first sentence. That's why D, in fact, is going to be our correct answer. We might also say indeed, right? We need a transition that is going to emphasize. For this purpose, this doesn't really work. This makes it seem like we have some kind of goal, and that's not really expressed here. In contrast, this is going to be for contrasting information, and we see that both of these sentences are basically telling us the same thing. Okay, so we can get rid of B and C besides. This might be used for a concession, right? But we don't have a concession here, so we can get rid of C. That's why D, in fact, is our correct answer. Question 36 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the sentence so we can identify the different elements of the sentence structure, and then we can talk about the punctuation rule that applies. So on some occasions, however, neutrinos do collide with other particles. Where does our independent clause begin? Our independent clause begins with the subject, and that is neutrinos. And then we have our verb, we have a helper verb, and then our verb collide. So neutrinos do collide with other particles, right? So if we were to simplify this sentence, this is what we would be left with, just the independent clause. And we have however, and we know that however is an interjection, has to go in between commas. And on some occasions, this is an introductory phrase. Okay, so we have a phrase, then we have an interjection, and then we get to our main clause. So we've identified however as an interjection. And what is the rule here? Interjections have to be framed in between commas. Sometimes we might use dashes, but it's much more common to use commas when we are framing interjections. Well, we know that F, no change, gives us no punctuation before our interjection, and we have a semicolon after. So that's not going to work. We can get rid of F. G, we have the 2 commas around however. This is our correct answer. H, we have a comma before however, but a semicolon after. We can only use a semicolon for 2 independent clauses, but this here is not an independent clause. So we can eliminate H. And J, we are just missing the comma after however. And that's why we would eliminate J. Question 37 is a purpose question. Here we have to decide whether the author should add a sentence or not. Now for this question, it's really important to read the entire paragraph. Because this sentence is so close to the topic sentence, it would help frame, if we add this, it would help frame the rest of the paragraph. So we want to have a good sense about what the paragraph is about. Okay, so we'll start here. Scientists specifically selected the site of the IceCube neutrino observatory to facilitate the detection of such a collision. Not only is the Antarctic subterranean ice exceptionally clear, it is also less pressurized due to its sub-zero altitude. These factors increase the chance of DOMs detecting the blue flash that signifies a neutrino collision. Once this detection occurs, data is gathered and transferred to laboratories at the University of Wisconsin. Here, the origin of each of these neutrinos is determined by analyzing the direction and intensity of the flash. Okay, so this is about one particular observatory, the IceCube Neutrino Observatory, which was built in the Antarctic subterranean ice. Okay, so we should keep that in mind as the focus of this paragraph. Now, if we look at the sentence that the author wants to add, in 1956, during the Colin Rains neutrino experiment, a neutrino was detected for the first time. We already know, based on how this passage began, that neutrinos have been detected. It's just that they are very difficult to detect. But we know, again, that this paragraph is about this particular observatory. So this just seems unrelated. I mean, topically, there's a way of making a connection here. We're still talking about neutrinos, but this paragraph is very specific. It's about this one observatory. So adding this does not really fit the function of this paragraph. A tells us that we should add it because the information is relevant to the history of neutrino detection. And that is true. It is relevant to the history of neutrino detection, but is that what this paragraph is about? Is this paragraph about neutrino detection or the history of neutrino detection? That is not the case, so we can eliminate A. B says that we should add it because the information indicates that sub-zero altitude is essential to the detection of neutrinos. As we see here, it doesn't mention anything about a sub-zero altitude. That is in the paragraph itself, not part of this sentence, so we can eliminate B. C says that we shouldn't add it because the information is unrelated to the discussion of why scientists selected the location of the IceCube Neutrino Observatory. And D tells us that we shouldn't add it because the information is unrelated to why the detection of neutrinos is facilitated by zero gravity conditions. D is very tricky because the paragraph does not mention zero gravity. It mentions zero altitude. So it's a little bit different. We can eliminate D. C is our correct answer. This information is unrelated to the discussion of the IceCube Neutrino Observatory. And that's why C is our correct answer. Question 38 is a punctuation question. I'll read the sentence first and we can identify the different components of the sentence structure. So scientists specifically selected the site of the IceCube Neutrino Observatory to facilitate the detection of such a collision. So what we have here, this is just one independent clause. So we have one independent clause. This is our subject, scientist, and then we have our verb, selected, and then we have this as the object of that verb. What follows is a prepositional phrase. These are not non-essential elements, although we don't even have an answer choice that would allow us to treat these as non-essential elements. And generally, if we can't think of a rule that applies, we don't want to add any punctuation. So we really only want to add punctuation when there is a rule behind that. Okay, so here we don't need any punctuation. Our correct answer is going to be F. Let's talk about the other answer choices. We're going to rule out G because this conjunction here is unnecessary, and this comma here would be incorrect if we are going to use a conjunction. And we only have two things, so they selected the site and to facilitate the detection. The meaning is not very clear there. The sentence is a little bit awkward, but even if that made sense, this comma would be incorrect because when we are using a conjunction to join two elements, we're not going to put a comma before that conjunction. Now, if we think about H and J, with H, we have a period, and with J, we have a semicolon. These are basically the same answer. And that is because we would use a period or a semicolon at the end of an independent clause. The problem is that what follows is not an independent clause. We already identified it as a prepositional phrase. So neither of these answer choices is going to work. And again, that's why F is our correct answer. Question 39 is a pronoun question, but we're also looking at easily confused words. I'm going to read the sentence here for some context, and then we'll talk about the different answer choices. So not only is the Antarctic subterranean ice exceptionally clear, and this is going to be important, is also less pressurized due to blank sub-zero altitude. We might say that we're talking about the sub-zero altitude of the Antarctic subterranean ice. The fact that we would use this preposition, the altitude of the subterranean ice, that suggests possession. So what we need here is a possessive pronoun. We already know that we're talking about something that's singular, the subterranean ice. Here we use it to refer to ice. So what we need here is a singular possessive pronoun. If we look at A, no change, this is a contraction for it is, not a possessive pronoun. B, there, this is possessive, but it's plural, and what we need is singular. That's going to be C. C is our correct answer. This is the pronoun that we need. D, this word just does not exist. This is already possessive, so the apostrophe here suggests that we're making it possessive, but it's possessive as it is, so we can also get rid of D. Question 40 is a verb question. More specifically, this is a subject-verb agreement question. When it comes to verb questions, I think subject-verb agreement is probably one of the trickiest things. So let's take a look at the sentence. Here, the origin of each of these neutrinos, blink, that's going to be our verb, determined by analyzing the direction and intensity of the flash. So the first thing that we have to do here is determine what the subject is. And we have a lot of information that comes before the verb, right? Everything here that is bracketed comes before the verb. So how do we determine what the subject is? Well, oftentimes we'll see a prepositional phrase after a noun, usually the article. When I say article, I mean the or a or an. That is going to be followed by the subject. And this prepositional phrase of each of these neutrinos functions more like a modifier because it's telling us something about this origin. So if we selected neutrinos as the subject, we're going to misconjugate the verb because neutrinos is plural, but origin is singular. So we would say the origin is determined. The origin is determined. That's why F is our correct answer. We can't say the origin have. We can't say the origin are, being, or are, right? So there are subject-verb agreement issues with the other answer choices. Question 41 is a topic sentence question. So we have to select the answer choice that is going to best frame the paragraph. Now, what I recommend doing with these types of questions is reading the paragraph first, identifying the topic, the main idea, the claim, and try to come up with a topic sentence on your own. That might be easier than trying to look at the answer choices first and perhaps trying to make them fit. Okay, so let's read the paragraph together. Then we'll talk about the main idea. So for instance, now this is important because we know that this sentence is going to provide an example of the claim made by the previous sentence, which would be our topic sentence. So for instance, some neutrinos are produced during supernovae, the collapsing of stars. The origins of these neutrinos could give us invaluable information about how, when, and why stars collapse. In other words, by studying neutrinos, we can learn about stars collapsing. Scientists are optimistic that the neutrinos detected at IceCube could lead to new ways of looking at our galaxy. In other words, neutrinos can help us understand our galaxy, the universe. Okay, so we might say that that's the main idea. We don't have to look too far to see a topic sentence that works. A no change here, determining neutrinos' origins. And that would work with the sentence that follows, for instance. So determining neutrinos' origins could provide scientists with new insights into the universe. In other words, new ways of looking at the universe. We know that that's what the paragraph discusses. That's why A is going to be our correct answer. B tells us, for decades, scientists have been trying to learn more about gamma rays. It's not really mentioned here. The focus isn't so much the study of supernovae, but studying neutrinos to learn about supernovae. So we can eliminate B. C, recently at IceCube, scientists discovered two neutrinos, which they now refer to as Bert and Ernie. Very random answer choice here, but we don't see any further discussion of this in the paragraph. Topic sentences should very much tell us in a very straightforward manner what a paragraph is going to be about. We can eliminate C. D, neutrinos can now be created in laboratories using a particle accelerator called a superproton synchrotron. That's not mentioned here. Again, we would expect this paragraph to discuss these things if this indeed were the correct answer. So that's why A, no change, is our correct answer for 41. Question 42 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the previous sentence and the beginning of the next sentence so we can talk about the structures here. So for instance, some neutrinos are produced during supernovae, that collapsing of stars. This here is an independent clause. So we could just put a period here. That seems to be correct so far. Let's take a look at what follows. The origins of these neutrinos could give us invaluable information about how, when, and why stars collapse. That's also an independent clause. So right now we have two independent clauses with F no change, and these are actually two separate sentences, and that is Perfectly fine. Each independent clause could be its own sentence. That's why F is our correct answer. We can just simply end this first clause with a period and go on to form a new sentence. G, we've already identified the fact that we have two independent clauses. With G, we have a conjunction. What's missing here is the comma. If we want to join two independent clauses with a conjunction, we also need a comma. H, we have just the comma, but no conjunction. This is going to be a comma splice. So we can eliminate H. And J, we don't have any punctuation. This would be a run-on sentence. That's why F is our correct answer. Question 43 is a word choice question. Now, because the beginning of the sentence is on the previous page, I'm going to scroll back so we can get a sense of the context. Okay, so we're told the origins of these neutrinos could give us blank information about how, when, and why stars collapse. So what's important to note here is that the word that we're going to choose is going to modify information. So we have to think about information when we are thinking about our answer choice. Okay, so what might we say here? If we were to come up with a word on our own, we might say important information. I know that's pretty general. But this information would lead us, why is it important? Because it would lead us to see the world or the galaxy rather in a new way, right? So it would be very valuable, very important information. Opulent doesn't work because opulent is used to refer to vast wealth. That doesn't really fit this context, wealth in a literal sense, so we can eliminate A. Invaluable, you may perhaps have been thrown off by the prefix here in, which generally means not valuable. But invaluable means not valuable because it's so valuable that it is beyond measure. So it is invaluable because it is so valuable that it is beyond measure. And that's what this information would be, because it could lead us to see our galaxy in a new way. And that's why B is our correct answer. C doesn't work, upscale. Upscale, we typically use to refer to something of very high quality, like a restaurant, an upscale restaurant. We don't really have the context here for upscale. And lavish also doesn't work. Lavish means something more along the lines of expending in abundance or producing something in abundance. That doesn't really fit the context, so we can eliminate D. And that's why B, invaluable, is our correct answer. Question 44 is a purpose question. And there's a pretty lengthy question stem here, so let's start there. The writer wants to emphasize that information garnered from the detected neutrinos at IceCube could have dramatic effects on how scientists study the universe. Which choice best accomplishes that goal? So the important terms here are perhaps dramatic effects and how scientists study the universe. So which choice best accomplishes that goal? If we look at the no change answer, I'm going to read the full sentence here for context. So scientists are optimistic that the neutrinos detected at IceCube, so we already have this part of the question, could lead to new ways, dramatic effects, of looking at, and with F no change, we have our galaxy and galaxies beyond. In other words, the universe, because our galaxy and galaxies beyond our galaxy are in the universe. So it's a more subtle way of getting at this idea that this could have a dramatic effect on how scientists study the universe. This is why F, no change, is our correct answer. What about G? Phenomena that have puzzled scientists over the last decade. This might be true. The problem here is that phenomena could mean a number of things. This is a little bit too general, so we can eliminate G. H, even more general, or perhaps we might say that it's more specific since it gives us a location, but common occurrences is not very specific. This could mean a number of things. But saying that this could give us a new way of looking at our galaxy, that's much more specific. And of course, that is the study of the universe. We can eliminate H. And J, the world around us, this is way too vague. It could mean the Earth in itself. It could mean space. It could mean our galaxy. Not very specific. So we would eliminate J as well. Question 45 is a purpose question, and it's a purpose question that is specific to the English section of the ACT. This is a question that asks about the passage as a whole. And here it's important to think about test mode. There are 3 test modes, and this means this tells us what a passage is doing. So a passage could be telling us a story, in which case it would be a narrative. A passage could be advancing some kind of claim, in which case it would be an argumentative passage, or a passage could simply provide information rather objectively, in which case we would classify this as an informative passage. So this was informative, and it was specifically telling us about the Ice Cube Observatory and what scientists hope to achieve through their work at this observatory. So looking at the title can give us a pretty useful clue, specifically for these types of questions. The title, Neutrinos on Ice, right, should confirm that the focus of this passage was this observatory below the ice in Antarctica. All right, so let's look at our answer choices. We'll read the question first. Suppose the writer's primary purpose had been to outline a scientific theory. I'm already having my doubts about this. There's really no scientific theory that this passage focuses on or outlines. A scientific theory concerning the origins of a particle in nature. So the essay doesn't really go into detail about outlining a scientific theory related to the origin of neutrinos. What it does tell us about, and we can see this up here, is about the Ice Cube Observatory. And again, looking at the title is very useful. Neutrinos on ice. Okay, so let's take a look at our answer choices. A says yes, because it explains how scientists are discovering new reasons why neutrinos emit a blue flash. So this is a little misleading because the passage does mention a blue flash, this blue flash known as the Cherenkov radiation, but this simply is to let us know that neutrino has been detected. The essay does not go into this explanation, providing new reasons why neutrinos emit this flash. So we can eliminate A. B says that this is a summary. It's a summary of how DOMs at the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory track neutrinos to their origins, despite neutrinos' numerous collisions with matter and electromagnetic forces. We know that this is false, that neutrinos have numerous collisions. In fact, part of the passage says that some of them can go billions of years without colliding with anything. So we can eliminate B. We also know that the Neutrino Observatory, its purpose is not to track neutrinos to their origins, but rather to detect them. All right, let's look at C. C says no, because it describes instead how neutrinos are detected at an observatory. This is true. and how these detections could benefit future scientific research. This is also true. We don't have to look too far to make a connection to that second point, that these detections at IceCube could lead to new ways of looking at our galaxy. And this is why C is our correct answer. What about D? D says no because it details instead how new research on neutrinos could potentially contradict a commonly held theory about supernovae. Even though supernovae are mentioned, the author does not make this claim that new research could contradict a commonly held theory. So we can also get rid of D. Question 46 is a pronoun question, and one that specifically involves relative pronouns. So all of the answer choices for 46 are relative pronouns. And a relative pronoun is a little bit different from a regular pronoun in that a relative pronoun repeats and replaces a noun. So let's take a look at the sentence here for some context. On the New York Times homepage, I noticed an article about Raphael and Leonardo Black, a 64-year-old Clinton Hill artist. Blank had just been discovered. So the relative pronoun here is going to repeat this noun, artist. We know that artist refers to a person. So that means that we need a personal pronoun. Looking at our answer choices here. So F, no change, we have who. G, of whom. We would only use this if we needed a preposition in this sentence. Then we have which is not used for people. This is not a personal pronoun. It can only be used for things, animals, ideas. We know we have a person, so we can eliminate H. So now we have to decide, we have who, of whom, and whom. We have to decide what the case should be. That means, are we replacing the subject or are we replacing the object? One way to tell is to look at what follows. What follows here is a verb, and the general structure of a sentence in English is subject followed by the verb. So this suggests that what we need here is a subjective pronoun. Another way to confirm that this is the case is to use a different pronoun. So here, would we say he, which is subjective, had just been discovered, or him, which is objective, had just been discovered? Well, this is a little bit more intuitive. We would say he, and this tells us that the case that we need is subjective. We can eliminate G, of whom. This gives us a preposition with the objective case, and J, whom. This is objective. So our correct answer is going to be F. Question 47 is a redundancy question. All of the answer choices we see here are grammatically correct. There are no punctuation issues. So we have to think about other elements when it comes to this question. And that's going to be redundancy mostly. So we'll go through these answer choices and talk about what elements specifically are redundant. So with A, no change, we're told Black, a native of Aruba. This information is new. Has been creating art in his New York City studio apartment for over 3 decades. This information is also new and quite important, as we'll see here in a minute. So we know that A, no change is our correct answer. This means that there are no redundancies here. As I mentioned, this information is new. So let's look at the other answer choices and identify the redundancies. So B tells us that he is originally from Aruba. This is new. And also tells us that for more than half his life, he has been creating art. Well, the previous paragraph tells us that he is 64. And this sentence tells us that he has been creating art for over 3 decades. So that is more than half his life. What we see in B is a redundancy with the second part of the phrase. C, living in Clinton Hill, but a native of Aruba. So this information is redundant, what I've underlined. Again, we find that in the previous paragraph. And D tells us that Black is a newly found artist originally from Aruba. This is the bit that's redundant, which again, we find in the previous paragraph. And this is why A, no change is our correct answer, because it is the only one that does not include elements that are redundant. Question 48 is a purpose question, and it's one that requires us to come up with a transition between sentences. I'm going to read starting here, just to get some context for this question. Okay, so he, and we're talking about Black, he never expected or tried to make a living as an artist. So that's going to be important. Then we have however. Now we should note that this is going to shift the narrative, the discussion here, since this is a contrast. In May of 2013, art dealer Francis Nauman directed to Black's art by one of Black's longtime friends. And then we have the question. So what information is going to help us transition to the sentence that follows? We're told that within days, 10 of Black's pieces sold for prices ranging from $16,000 to $28,000. So what's important here is going to be this phrase, within days. This sentence is going to follow a sentence that directly connects to this phrase. So within days of what? We're looking for some kind of event that would relate to what this sentence is telling us. That 10 of Black's pieces sold for prices ranging from $16,000 to $28,000. Okay, so F, no change. We know this is the correct answer. And it tells us that this art dealer displayed 16 of the artist's drawings in a solo show. Now, this is an event. It is an exhibition. And it would then make sense to say that within days of this exhibition, 10 of Black's pieces sold, right? And we have another way of connecting these ideas. So 10 of the 16 pieces sold. So this is why F, no change, is our correct answer. Let's take a look at the other answer choices. G was taking down an artist's long-running exhibition at his Manhattan gallery. Well, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We are taking, in this example, or this answer choice, we are taking the art down. That would not make as much sense as an exhibition. So we can eliminate G. H tells us that the art dealer became aware that Black had never shown his drawings. So this is perhaps related to what happens here, but we're missing a lot of information, a lot of steps to Black then selling his art. So we can eliminate H and J. That the artist recognized that no one in the New York City art world had heard of Black. Again, we're missing some steps here, right? So this might have been true, but then how do we get to this sentence that Black was able to sell 10 of his pieces? So we can also eliminate J. Question 49 is a punctuation question. I'm going to take a look at the sentence so we can get some context. And we'll talk about the different elements of the sentence structure. So within days, 10 of Black's pieces sold for prices ranging from $16,000 to $28,000. So first we have a phrase, and we have our subject as part of the independent clause, 10 of Black's pieces, and then we have the verb. We could just end the sentence there. This is our independent clause. Within days, 10 of Black's pieces sold. So part of what we have to do here is determine where is this preposition going? Should this go with sold or should it go with prices? And it's going to go with prices. So it's going to give us a prepositional phrase. That means that this comma is misplaced with a no change. We could use a comma here, but if we wanted to use a comma, it would have to go after the verb so that this preposition could be part of what follows, the elements that follow. So we can eliminate a no change. Now, B is our correct answer. It gives us the correct placement of the preposition in relation to the punctuation. We have a single dash. And when we have a single dash, this functions a little bit like a colon in that it reveals information. And here that information is about how much these pieces sold for. Right, so they sold for prices ranging from 16,000 to 28,000. C gives us a semicolon, and we've established that we could just end the sentence there, since that is an independent clause, but what follows is simply a phrase. So we can't use a semicolon. And D, this is similar to B in that we're using, in B, we have a single dash that functions a little bit like a colon, but here the placement of the preposition is incorrect. This should go after the punctuation. So this is why we can eliminate D. Question 50 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the sentence so that we can talk about the sentence structure and the rules that are relevant in this case. Black draws collages in black #2 pencil on whiteboard. And they're packed with depictions of ancient myths, historical events, and popular culture. So what we have here are two independent clauses. Here's the subject of the first clause: Black draws collages in black #2 pencil on whiteboard. We could just end the sentence there. That's an independent clause. Then we have a conjunction, as we see here with F no change, and the beginning of our second clause. They is our subject, and are packed. Are here is our verb, and this is our second clause. So how do we join two independent clauses? We could use a conjunction, as we see here with F no change, but we also need a comma. We don't have the comma there, so we can eliminate F. Because they are two independent clauses, it means that we could just make them separate sentences. And as we see here with G, we have a period, and that would be correct. This is why G is our correct answer. With H, we have a comma, but we are missing the conjunction. So we would need a comma conjunction. We're missing that conjunction, so we can eliminate H. And J, we don't have any punctuation. This would be a run-on sentence. So we can also eliminate J. Question 51 is a redundancy question. Now, all of these answer choices are grammatically correct. We don't find any punctuation issues, but there are issues of redundancy. So let's take a look at the sentence. Black draws collages in black #2 pencil on whiteboard, and they're packed with depictions, and here with a no change, we have in the form of drawings of ancient myths, historical events, and popular culture. So with a no change, what are the redundancies? Well, we're already told that Black draws these things on whiteboard. So in the form of drawings is redundant. B repeats this information that we're using black pencil, black #2 pencil, as we see a little bit more specific in the text itself. So we can eliminate B. C, drawings that create collages. So we already have this idea that he is drawing collages. So both of those elements are redundant. Our correct answer here is D. These are drawings packed with depictions of ancient myths, historical events, and popular culture. So this is the only answer choice that is not redundant. Question 52 is a punctuation question, although this question also involves modifiers, and this is going to be relevant to the rule or perhaps lack of rule. So let's take a look at the sentence for some context. It features a representation of a British psychedelic poster, a portrayal of Danish surrealist painter Wilhelm Fredi at work, and a tiny figure of Los Angeles architect Simon Rodia. So what are the elements that are relevant here? So we have surrealist, painter. These are two adjectives. We could think of this as one perhaps. And then we have our noun, and that is the artist. So Wilhelm Fredi. And then we have a prepositional phrase here that functions as a modifier. Because we have perhaps two sets of modifiers. We could say surrealist, painter, and at work. We know that if we place an adjective before a noun, we don't place a comma in between, right? So thinking of these elements in those terms, we could see why this comma here would be incorrect. We wouldn't place a comma between an adjective and a noun, very much like we see here. Right, so poster is a noun, psychedelic is an adjective. So this comma would be incorrect. We also wouldn't place a comma if a noun is followed by a prepositional phrase that functions as a modifier. Okay, so we can eliminate F. Well, with G, we have the comma after our noun. And again, we wouldn't place a comma between a noun and a prepositional phrase that modifies it. So we can eliminate G. With H, the problem here is the comma between the adjective and the noun. Again, J is our correct answer because we don't need any punctuation here. And if we can't think of a rule that tells us that we need to add a comma, then adding that comma is probably going to be incorrect. And again, this is why J is our correct answer, because in this case, we don't want to add any punctuation. Question 53 is a verb question. In particular, this is about subject-verb agreement. I'm going to read this sentence here so that we can get a sense of the subject that we need for this verb. So I wasn't sure how the drawings in 7 Lamps, so detailed that I could see the folds in Rodia's clothing, blink together logically. And we can stop reading here since this would take us onto a new clause. So what we have here are 2 clauses. We have an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. Here is our first subject and the corresponding verb. So I wasn't sure. That's independent. And this is where our dependent clause begins. So how the drawings, that's going to be our subject, our second subject. In 7 Lamps, and we have these non-essential elements that we should ignore for the purposes of this question to know how we're going to conjugate this verb. Typically, when you isolate the subject from the verb, you put things in between. Sometimes the conjugation gets a little trickier. So if you ignore those elements, you'll be able to go directly from the subject to the verb. So how the drawings in 7 Lamps fit. We know that works. This is, in fact, our correct answer. We know that there's an issue with B. The drawings in 7 Lamps has fit. There's an agreement issue. We can eliminate B. There's also an agreement issue with C, how the drawings is fit, and agreement issue with D as well, how the drawings fits. The only grammatically correct answer choice here is A, no change. Question 54 is a purpose question. We have to determine what the purpose of these underlying elements are in relation to this sentence and this paragraph. In other words, what would the essay lose if the author were to delete these underlying elements? I'm going to read this here for context. I wasn't sure how the drawings in Seven Lamps, so detailed that I could see the folds in Rhodia's clothing, fit together logically, but I liked that there was so much for me to puzzle over. So this conjunction is important to note because this suggests a contrast between these two ideas. So what is the author saying in this first part? I wasn't sure how the drawings fit together logically. In other words, I didn't really understand it all. I didn't really understand, but I liked that there was so much for me to puzzle over or think about, or to try to figure out, right? Because I didn't fully understand, I liked that. I liked the fact that I had to think about it critically, perhaps. Okay, so we have a contrast of ideas. So what would the paragraph or the essay lose? Well, F tells us that this would be, we would lose a claim arguing that the reason Noman chose to show Black's art is that the art offers so much for a viewer to reflect upon and analyze. This is not so much a claim. This is a statement that expresses the perspective of the author, right? It is personal. So it's not a claim about how viewers are going to relate to this art, how they're going to reflect upon the art. So we can eliminate F. G tells us that this is a detail indicating that the narrator appreciated Black's collage, even though it's going to be important because this suggests a contrast, just as we see here. He or she might not have understood its overall intent. And this is our correct answer. This is basically the relationship that we saw between these two clauses. So the narrator appreciated Black's collage. I liked that there was so much for me to puzzle over, even though he or she might not have understood its overall intent. I wasn't sure how this all fit together logically. H says that this is a comment suggesting that though the narrator enjoys only some of Black's art, he or she is glad that Black has been discovered. This also gives us a contrast, but it's not the same ideas, right? For instance, here we see that the author, or this tells us that the author expresses that he or she is glad that Black has been discovered, but that's not what we see here. In the underlying elements, I like that there was so much for me to puzzle over. That's more so about the art and not so much about Black as an artist. We can eliminate H. And J says that this is a statement revealing the narrator's belief that the best modern art is understood only by the artist who created it. Now, that's very far from what we see here in the underlying elements. We don't really see anything specifically mentioned about modern art, and that this is only understood by the artist who created it, right? All we're told is that the narrator didn't fully understand how these things went together logically. Question 55 is a modifier question. Here we have to think about the best place for the modifier, which we see underlined here in May. So what's important to consider here is that in English, a modifier will modify exactly what is right next to it. So we have to think about carefully about what elements are next to this modifier. So A says that we should leave it where it is. And actually, let's first read the sentence without the modifier. Maybe this complexity helps explain why Black's work created such a stir. Okay, so can we leave it where it is? This complexity in May. This complexity in May. That is a misplaced modifier because this complexity refers to the complexity of the artist's art. This complexity in May suggests that the month of May had some complexity. right? Again, a modifier is going to modify exactly what is next to it. B says that perhaps after the word maybe. So maybe in May, this complexity. Maybe in May, this complexity. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, that is a misplaced modifier. C, after the word explain, maybe this complexity helps explain in May. Explain in May. That is, again, misplaced. That is suggesting that we will get an explanation in May. That's not the intended meaning here. Okay, so this must be D after the word stir. Maybe this complexity helps explain why Black's work created such a stir in May. This makes sense because that would be in May is modifying this part of the sentence, that it created a stir in May, in the month of May. That makes sense in context of the narrative here, and this is why D is our correct answer. Question 56 is a purpose question. We have a question stem, so let's start there. The writer wants to clearly establish that the newspaper article claims Black is unmoved by the sudden interest in his art. Which choice best accomplishes that goal? So what does this mean exactly? That Black is unmoved by the sudden interest in his art. So that is the purpose of this question, or the purpose of the correct answer. What we're adding here, we want to express this idea that Black is unmoved, meaning that he is unaffected, he is unfazed by this attention, this new attention on his art, interest in his art. So F, no change. We're told that Black observes the sudden interest in his drawings. This is close in meaning to acknowledges, or he pays attention. This tells us that he perhaps now to observe or to acknowledge does not really show in how Black feels. This is a little bit more descriptive. There's no element about how Black feels about this interest, right? We want an answer choice that tells us that he doesn't really care, perhaps, that he's not very affected by it or affected at all. Unmoved. Okay, so we can eliminate F. G, Black is nearly a celebrity in Clinton Hill. This does not tell us anything about how Black feels, but this is generally about Black as an artist and becoming a celebrity, right? Again, there's no way of making a connection there to what we see in the question. H says that Black has benefited financially from. This is a fact. Again, doesn't reveal anything about how Black feels. Yeah, so we can eliminate H. J tells us that Black gives little thought to the sudden interest. So he doesn't pay attention to it. He's not affected by it. Okay, this is why J is our correct answer, because this tells us to give little thought to suggests that Black is unmoved by this interest. Question 57 is a transition question. So we have a question stem here. Which choice provides the most effective transition from the preceding sentence to this sentence? And I'm actually going to read the beginning of this paragraph just for some context. So I read that Black gives little thought to the sudden interest in his drawings. He says he's always been an artist, regardless of who knew it. And we have the underlined elements as part of the question and another clause. I'll keep checking the times for word of his next show. So the beginning of this paragraph is all about Black and his art. So we want something that's going to be in line with these ideas. Let's take a look at the answer choices. A, no change, given that I know the city. So this does not provide a transition because it introduces a new idea. And that is the city, right? There's no mention here of the city. And there's really no relationship between this clause, given that I know the city, I'll keep checking the times, right? The relationship of ideas there is not clear. It doesn't really work. So we can eliminate A. B, since I'm knowledgeable about art and books, I'll keep checking the times. Again, that doesn't really work. This dependent clause does not really set up the information that follows, right? That relationship doesn't really work. C, now that I know about him, I'll keep checking the times for word of his next show. This makes sense. And it connects to the previous sentence, right? Which tells us that didn't really matter to Black if people thought of him as an artist or not, because he's always considered himself an artist, regardless of who knew it. But now that I know him or know about him, I'll keep checking the times for word of his next show, right? This is our correct answer. It connects to the previous sentence and it helps set up the information that follows. And D, knowing that I like the news, this might be related here to the clause that follows, but it does not really connect to the previous sentence, for which reason we could eliminate D as well. Question 58 is a concision question, but we should also think about purpose. We need to consider what the purpose of this paragraph is, and whether adding certain elements might shift the focus, might take us away from what the paragraph is doing. Okay, so I'm going to read the paragraph here for some context. I read that Black gives little thought to the sudden interest in his drawings. He says that he's always been an artist regardless of who knew it. Now that I know about him, I'll keep checking the times for word of his next show when I walk home from the urban vintage. With F, no change, we have here its decor often being updated with restored antiques and vintage housewares. I wonder if I'll pass the brownstone building where Black creates his fascinating newly found art. So there's nothing grammatically incorrect about the non-essential elements here. There's nothing redundant about it. But if we think in terms of, in context of the passage, this is too much detail. It puts the focus on the urban vintage. And this really is about the artist, his art, and the narrator coming to discover this artist, right? So adding this about the urban village vintage, this description about the urban vintage is unnecessary. It's too much detail for this one thing. So we can eliminate F. G, the non-essential elements here, easily carrying my lightweight laptop in my old navy blue messenger bag. Again, these elements are, while they add detail, they add to the narrative here. It is unnecessary, again, because the focus is really about the artist, his art, and the narrator coming to discover that art. So we can eliminate G. H, I can't be late to meet a friend exactly at 8. It's unclear what the relevance of these non-essential elements are, again, for the purposes of this paragraph and the passage as a whole. We don't need any of these non-essential elements. All of this information would be unnecessary, again, for what this paragraph is doing. This is why our correct answer is going to be J. Question 59 is a punctuation question. I'm going to start reading the beginning of this clause so we can talk about the structure. So I wonder if I'll pass the brownstone building where Black creates his fascinating newly found art. So this first clause is an independent clause, I wonder. Then we have a dependent clause, if I'll pass the brownstone building. And then we have another dependent clause where Black creates his fascinating newly found art. We also have a relative pronoun, where. So where Black creates his fascinating newly found art, this relative pronoun is referring back to building. Now, we wouldn't place a comma looking at a no change. Our subject is Black, and the verb for this clause is creates. And we wouldn't place a comma between a subject and a verb unless we had non-essential elements. So we can eliminate a no change. Now, B, we don't need a comma before our relative pronoun. So this looks okay, and there's no comma after Black, after our subject. So B looks to be correct, but I'm going to hold off on choosing B for 1 minute. Okay, C, we don't have a comma after our subject. We do have a comma before the relative pronoun, and we could use that comma there. It's going to come down to meaning, as we'll see here in a minute. D gives us a colon. This isn't going to work because there's really no equivalence between what we see on either side of the colon. This is new information about the brownstone building. All right, so we can eliminate D. Now, both B and C are grammatically correct in terms of punctuation. These are both correct. What we have to decide here is whether these are non-essential elements. With C, we would be treating this second dependent clause as non-essential, and B would treat it as essential. So how do we know? Well, the article here is going to be very important. We're not talking about a brownstone building. We're talking about the brownstone building, which means that we are restricting the meaning of this sentence, this idea. For instance, if we to see if these are non-essential, we could put a period here. I wonder if I'll pass the brownstone building. I wonder if I'll pass the brownstone building. Right? We can't, with this article, we can't just end the sentence there, because this tells us that we are specifying, we are restricting the meaning of building. And so we don't want to add a comma, because adding a comma would treat these elements as non-essential, right? But if we did, if we treated these elements as non-essential, then this article, the sentence, would not make as much sense. So we're going to eliminate C, and that leaves B as our correct answer. Question 60 is an organization question. It's a bit of a different organization question. We're not moving a sentence around in a paragraph. We are instead given a sentence, and we have to decide where to add it. So we know that the correct answer here is going to be H, that this should be added in point C in paragraph 3. What we'll do here is we'll read this sentence, we'll go back to that paragraph and talk about the connections that we can make between the sentence and different elements of that paragraph. So we have the sentence here. Fortunately, the web page included a key that identified the people, places, and events, most of which I had never even heard of, that Black portrays in this piece. A couple of important elements about this sentence. First, fortunately. Then we have the web page. So we're talking about one particular page. A key that identified people, places, and events that Black portrays in this piece. So I'm going to scroll up to the third paragraph. And I have the sentence typed out here as well so that we can make connections. Okay, so we're going to add the sentence here, point C of paragraph 3. So what would this follow? I found a collage titled 7 Lamps in a Quick Search Online. Now, this is the only part of this passage that mentions an online search, anything potentially related to a web page. So following this online search, we're told, fortunately, the web page included a key that identified the people, places, and events. We have people, places, and events, most of which I'd never even heard of, that Black portrays in this piece. So the piece, features a representation of a British psychedelic poster, a portrayal. This connects here to Black portrays in this piece, a portrayal of Danish surrealist painter Wilhelm Fredi. That connects to people, and a tiny figure of Los Angeles architect Simon Rodia. So we can make connections to the previous sentence. I found a collage titled 7 Lamps in a Quick Search Online, as well as to the information that follows. And this is why we're going to add this sentence at point C, paragraph 3. Question 61 is a punctuation question. What we have here is a comparison. I'm going to put the clause that we need for this question in brackets, and we'll read the clause before looking at the question more specifically and the answer choices. So they are considered little more than rats with wings. So here is our comparison. We know we have a comparison because of this phrase here, more than. And when we have a comparison, typically we would not use any punctuation. As we see here with a no change, there's a comma after than. And we shouldn't have a comma here. This is one complete expression. So the element before the more than and the element that comes after, right? So this phrase joins these two elements together in comparison. So we want to place a comma here. We can eliminate a no change. B gives us a dash. When we use a dash, a single dash, this mimics a colon. And the thing to remember is that a colon or a single dash here would be considered a type of end punctuation, which means that we would have to treat it as a period. And we know that we can't end the sentence there after than, so we can eliminate B. C gives us a semicolon. We can only use semicolons to join two independent clauses, and that's not what we have here. So we can't use the semicolon. Our correct answer is going to be D, again, because we don't use any punctuation when it comes to making comparisons. Question 62 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the sentence so that we can identify the different elements of the sentence structure. So in many urban areas, they're considered little more than rats with wings. We could just end the sentence here. We could put a period there, which tells us that this is an independent clause. Now with F, no change, we have blamed for spreading disease and despoiling statues. What we have here is what looks like a verb, but because there's no subject, that's part of the second part of the sentence, this is considered a participle. which means that it acts more like an adjective. So with F no change, we've created a participle phrase. And that's what this answer choice gives us. This is a participle phrase. The entire thing works as a kind of adjective. And these participle phrases always modify the subject of the sentence. That is they, meaning pigeons. So this certainly works as a modifying phrase, as a participle phrase that works. And this is the punctuation that we would use. This is why F, no change, is our correct answer. Let's take a look at G. With G, we create a second independent clause. So we have a subject and a verb. We also have a conjunction, which means that we would be joining two independent clauses with a conjunction, but there's something missing here, and that is the comma that should go before the conjunction. So we can eliminate G. H gives us a comma, but no conjunction. This is what we would call a comma splice when we try to use a comma as a period. So we can eliminate H. And J, we see, gives us a participle phrase as we have with F, but we have a period, which would make the participle phrase stand alone as a sentence. And it is a phrase, so we can't do that. And that's why we would eliminate J. Question 63 is a transition question, which means that we have to think very carefully about the relationship between the two sentences that this transition is going to connect. So I'm going to read the previous sentence, and then we'll read the following sentence and think about the relationship between them. So in many urban areas, they are considered little more than rats with wings, blamed for spreading disease and despoiling statues. One species, the homing pigeon, is among the best navigators of the natural world. So one way to think about this question and the relationship between these two sentences is to think quite generally about whether they are saying good things, positive things, or negative things about pigeons. So if we look at the previous sentence, little more than rats with wings, blamed for spreading disease and despoiling statues. So these are pretty negative things to say about pigeons. The following sentence talks about the homing pigeon and tells us that it is among the best navigators of the natural world. These are fairly positive things to say about the pigeon, one of the best navigators. So what is the relationship between these two sentences? What we have here is a contrast, which means that we need a transition that is going to give us a contrast. A no change, for example, this is used for emphasis. So that's not going to work here. B, similarly, is used for additional information. And what we have here is a contrast. However, C, this is our correct answer because however is used for contrast. And thus D we would rule out because thus is used for cause and effect relationships. And again, that's not what we have here. We have a contrast. Question 64 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the sentence and we'll go through the different answer choices and talk about the elements of the sentence structure. So we have, however, one species, the homing pigeon, then with F no change, which is among the best navigators of the natural world. So looking at the sentence structure here, we have an interjection, and we know that interjections are non-essential, so we can ignore this interjection. One species, this is where we would imagine the clause would begin. Okay, that means that species should be the subject. Then what we see is a comma. This suggests that what comes next are non-essential elements. So with F, no change, what we have here is which, a relative pronoun, and it is followed by a verb. That means that we have a dependent clause. This is a relative dependent clause because it's formed with a relative pronoun. So this would mean that with F no change, we have one dependent clause, and we know that that can't stand on its own as a sentence. G gives us that instead of which, but this is still a relative pronoun. That is still a relative pronoun. The only thing that we've changed here is the punctuation. We would still have a relative dependent clause with G, so we can eliminate G. H, this is our correct answer because we eliminate the relative pronoun, and that means that we can use the verb in the sentence with this subject, which should be species. So we can reread this sentence with this answer choice to confirm that we have an independent clause. One species is among the best navigators of the natural world. So that works. This is why H is our correct answer. We would eliminate J because we are missing the comma after pigeon for these non-essential elements. Question 65 is a pronoun question. We can also think of this as an easily confused words question. So what we have here for the underlined portion, we're going to need a pronoun. And to know exactly what kind of pronoun we need, we're going to have to look at the previous sentence. So one species, the homing pigeon, is among the best navigators of the natural world. We're talking about the homing pigeon. This is singular, and this is going to be important to remember. So the next sentence, blank navigational ability has earned the homely pigeon, again, we're talking about the pigeon, an undeniable place in history. So what we need here is a possessive pronoun. And we know we need a possessive pronoun because we're talking about the navigational ability of the pigeon. This is another way that we would say this, the navigational ability of the pigeon. Again, we're talking about a singular pigeon. So we're talking about its navigational ability, its navigational ability. So we know that it can't be there. We can eliminate A, and we can also eliminate B. There, this is a contraction for they are. So if we look at C and D, both of these are its, except that D is the possessive pronoun. C is a contraction for it is, but what we need is a possessive pronoun, and that's why D is our correct answer. Question 66 is a word choice question. So we're going to read the sentence first and try to get a sense of the intended meaning for the underlying term. So blank modern technologies like the radio or telephone, commanders on the battlefield often face challenges in communicating, depending on their location. So we have here is our subject and the verb, and we have a phrase. So this phrase is going to set up the information that follows in the rest of the sentence in the main clause. So let's look at our answer choices. We have F no change, former. This is used to refer to something before or prior. Then we have before. Earlier, this is very close in meaning to former. Earlier or former technologies in this context would mean pretty much the same thing. And prior, this also suggests something that came before. So our correct answer here is going to be G, before, because the intended meaning here is we're talking about a time before the existence of modern technologies. So it's almost a comparison to the existence of modern technologies, a time before and a time after. The problem with the other answer choices is that instead of giving us a sense of a time before, they modify technologies directly. So former technologies, earlier technologies, but we don't really have a sense. That doesn't work because we don't have a sense of what these would be compared to. Same with earlier or prior. So F, H, and J are very close in that sense, that they would imply that we are referring to, we're making a comparison to something that came before. And that's why G is our correct answer. Question 67 is a purpose question. I'm going to read the sentence first, and then we'll talk about the different answer choices. So before modern technologies like the radio or telephone, commanders on the battlefield often face challenges in communicating, depending on their location. So the first thing that I would note about what's underlined is that this is fairly general, depending on their location. It doesn't tell us a whole lot. So let's take a look at the phrase that the author is thinking about adding. So as we see here with the question stem, the writer is considering revising the underlined portion to the following. What we have here is especially across long distances and difficult terrain. This is more informative than what we have in the text already. So it looks like the author perhaps should make this change. Let's look at the answer choices. A says yes, because it offers a better indication of the circumstances that made communication difficult. And we can identify what those circumstances were. So we have long distances as well as difficult terrain. This is, again, much more specific than simply saying depending on their location. And this is actually our correct answer. Let's take a look at the other answer choices. B says yes, because it more clearly identifies the locations of and distances between the troops. So in order for this to identify the locations, we would be looking for specific places. But all it tells us is that we're talking about long distances and difficult terrain. So we can eliminate B. C says no, because it adds information that is irrelevant. This is just simply not true. This is exactly what made pigeons very useful. So this is relevant. We can eliminate C. And D says that we shouldn't add it or make the change because it suggests that homing pigeons are unnecessary today. That is quite the leap to make, or quite a leap to make. That's a pretty big inference from what we have here. So we can also eliminate D. Question 68 is a redundancy and concision question. Now, what's relevant for this question begins right about here. The pigeon was a particularly good soldier in such endeavors. It flew fast, it flew high, and it always blinked. And what we see here with F no change, it always quickly returned and came back. So we have a redundancy here between returned and came back. This means the same thing. And we don't need to say quickly because we already know that it flew fast. So we see some redundancies with F no change. G says speedily returned, coming home. So these two redundancies here, returned and coming home, as well as speedily. We can eliminate G. Returned home. To return implies that you are, or at least in this context, that it is going home. So returned home is redundant, unnecessary. We can just simply say returned, and this is why J is our correct answer. Question 69 is a modifier question, and in particular, it is a dangling modifier question. So this is the sentence for this question, and I'm going to start at the beginning here. One of 600 birds used by the U.S. Army Signal Corps in France during World War I. What we have here is a phrase, and this is a modifying phrase. So this is the modifier. This whole thing works as a modifier. And the rule is that this needs to modify the subject of the clause and the clause that would follow. So what is this referring to? One of 600 birds used by the U.S. Army. We are talking about, of course, cher ami, a particular pigeon. We're talking about cher ami, right? So this phrase needs to modify the subject. Here we have the subject is cher ami's missions. That would be a no change. So we have a dangling modifier here. We're not referring to the subject that this phrase is intended for. Again, that is cher ami. B, the subject here would be 12 missions. That is not the correct subject. C, we have successful missions. This is our subject. D is our correct answer because it's the only one that gives us the appropriate subject for our modifying phrase. Question 70 is a redundancy question. I'm going to read from the beginning of the paragraph so we can identify the redundant elements in the answer choices. So near Verdun, France, the 77th Infantry Division became separated from U.S. forces. The men were surrounded by German troops and were rapidly running out of rations. So with F no change, we're told that they were separated from other U.S. forces. We're already told that they were separated from U.S. forces here. So this information would be redundant. We can eliminate F no change. G says German troops were all around them. This is already expressed here. The men were surrounded by German troops. That's the same idea. So that would be redundant. H, they would soon be out of rations. We are told this right before the question that they were rapidly running out of rations. So that would also be redundant. Here, our correct answer is J. We want to delete the underlined portion. Question 71 is a punctuation question. I'm going to read the sentence and then we'll look through the answer choices. So they had but one link to headquarters homing pigeons. So from this, we should understand that the one link are the homing pigeons. So that is the one link, the homing pigeons. So there's an equivalence between what we find on this side of the sentence and this side of the sentence. And this is going to be relevant as we look through the answer choices. There's an equivalence. The one link equals the homing pigeons. So looking at a no change, we don't see any punctuation here. And that's a problem because we have one noun, and we can think of this as a compound noun. Perhaps homing pigeon is a thing, although technically homing would be a modifier for pigeons. But in this case, we need some kind of punctuation. Even if we didn't have that modifier, we can't just place two nouns next to each other with no punctuation, unless they're a compound noun, like mop head, right? That's two nouns placed together, but that's a little bit different. So we're missing punctuation here. That's not going to work. B gives us a colon, and a colon is a type of equal sign. So it reveals that the one link is what we see on the other side of the colon, right? Homing pigeons. This is actually our correct answer. C doesn't work because we have a semicolon, and we could place it here after headquarters. We do have an independent clause here, but not what follows, right? And so we need two independent clauses for that to work. We can eliminate C. D gives us a comma. And while this comes close, it might be a little ambiguous as to whether we are including homing pigeons as part of this phrase. They had but one link to headquarters, comma, homing pigeons, meaning also two homing pigeons. So that might be a little bit unclear about D. And so this is why we would rule that answer choice out. Question 72 is a verb question, but we also have to think about sentence structure because the different answer choices are going to give us different sentence structures. So let's take a look. We'll go through the different answer choices and see how the sentence structure changes. And we'll also want to pay attention to the verb tense. So F, no change. It was becoming clear that the Americans were unaware of the 77th's whereabouts. The situation grew dire. So what we have here with F, no change are two independent clauses. That's our first subject and our verb, which is in the past progressive, was becoming. And then we have our second subject, situation, and our verb grew. So we have two independent clauses joined by a comma. This comma would be a comma splice. That is a punctuation error. So we can rule out F. G, having become clear that the Americans were unaware of the 77th's whereabouts. This doesn't quite work because having become is not a conjugated verb. We don't have a clause with G. What we have is a participle, and a participle phrase that is typically used to describe the subject. But this doesn't quite work, so we can rule out G. H, as it became clear that the Americans were unaware of the 77th's whereabouts, the situation grew dire. So this is our correct answer. Because we have a subject, we have a verb, and we have a subordinating conjunction or a subordinator that's going to give us a dependent clause. Which we need because what follows is an independent clause and we have a comma in between them. So that is the rule that applies here. If you have a dependent clause followed by an independent clause, you need a comma in between them. J doesn't work because we have a subject and a verb, but this would give us an independent clause. This is the same issue that we saw with F, no change. Question 73 is a punctuation question. Let's take a look at the sentence and then we'll go through the different answer choices. So the French military awarded Cher Ami a medal, the War Cross. What we have here is an appositive. An appositive is when we restate a noun in a way that provides more information. And it's a way of redefining a term that we have already used. And the rule is when we have an appositive, we need a comma in between them. And that's what we see here. And this is why A is our correct answer. The problem with B is that we get a subject and a verb that create an independent clause, and we would be using a comma in between two independent clauses. This is a comma splice, so that would not work. We get the same issue with C. We get a pronoun and a verb following a comma. So same punctuation issue. The problem with D, we get a period and that's okay. Simply after this independent clause, we can end the sentence there. The French military awarded Cher-Ami a medal. We could just place a period there. The problem is that what follows is not another sentence, is not a sentence. That's the only way in which D could work. So we're going to rule D out as well. Question 74 is a preposition question. And fortunately, when it comes to prepositions, there are no rules that we can point to. We're not really talking about grammar rules as much as we are talking about convention. And that is, we just have to be familiar with how prepositions are used with different verbs and different expressions. So let's take a look at the sentence. Although one might question the extent blank which Cher-Ami understood his mission. So that's really all we need for this question to get a sense of the context, the phrase that we're going to be using this preposition in. And when it comes to this word, the extent, the preposition that we use is to. We might ask this in a question: to what extent are you willing to go, right? To is the preposition that we need here. We see that with F, no change. We have in, the extent in which, that's not going to work. G, of, the extent of. That might work in some context, but here we're talking about going to an extent, or understanding his mission to what extent. So of is not going to work in this context. We see that H gives us to, the preposition that we need, and we would eliminate J because we need a preposition in this context. Again, that preposition here is to. Question 75 is a purpose question. We have a question stem, so let's start with that question. Which choice best concludes the sentence and essay by connecting Cher-Ami's story to a specific idea raised in the first paragraph of the essay? So let's take a look at that first paragraph and identify a specific idea, or perhaps the main idea here. So pigeons have a fairly poor reputation. In many urban areas, they are considered little more than rats with wings, blamed for spreading disease and despoiling statues. However, one species, the homing pigeon, is among the best navigators of the natural world. Its navigational ability has earned the homely pigeon an undeniable place in history. So what do we see in this first paragraph? First, we have a comparison between pigeons in urban areas and the homing pigeon, and the author emphasizes or highlights its navigational ability. So let's take a look at our answer choices. A, no change. His story, Cher-Ami's story, proves that pigeons are unique. While that might be true, this is a little bit general. Doesn't really nicely connect to an idea raised in the first paragraph. So let's get rid of A. B is testimony to the homing pigeon's navigational skill and instinct. This is a clear connection. As we just read that first paragraph, this is what the author does. That is the specific idea raised in the first paragraph. This is also our correct answer. C, his story proves or has made people reconsider the definition of heroism. That's not a theme that's introduced in the first paragraph, so we can eliminate C. And D, his story suggests that even birds can be brave. This is very much related, very similar to what we saw in C, but that's not an idea that we saw raised in that first paragraph.